It's showtime. What's up, good people, and welcome to the #1 podcast on the planet, The Frank Harris Show. Here we go. Yo, Randy, what's good, man?
All is well.
How you doing today? You good?
All is well, man.
Good. So, Randy, listen, man. I got something good to talk about today. All right? College recruiting. Now, it used to be, Randy, colleges built from the high school ranks. You know, class on top of class, right? You recruit a good class and they come in as freshmen and they develop and grow. Then they become sophomores in college. And then you go and recruit another class and they become rising freshmen. And you build class on top of class on top of class. And that's how programs were built, okay? Then the transfer portal came. And the transfer portal has absolutely screwed it up for high school recruits. Absolutely screwed it up for high school recruits. Now think about this concept, okay? If you're a college coach, basketball coach, football coach, okay? The way it goes is this. It's a high school kid, you start recruiting the kid probably sophomore year, soft recruiting early on, even freshman year for really, really elite kids. But definitely by sophomore year, you are starting to have some contact with some players, right? You're sending mail to the players, and you're expressing some level of interest. But serious recruiting normally starts after the sophomore season. So the summer of your sophomore year, after your sophomore year is over, is when schools can seriously recruit. And that's when they can start placing phone calls and they can start getting more serious about recruiting players. Now, you started recruiting a kid as a sophomore. It gets serious by the time the kid is a rising junior. And you recruit them through their senior seasons. So that means for at least 3 years you recruited a kid. And now recruiting consists of phone calls, letters, coming out to watch kids play, whether it be at their high schools, whether it be at AAU tournaments, at 7-on-7 football events. As many places as you can go, you have to watch the kid. You have to text. You're talking to the mom. You're talking to the dad. You're talking to the high school coach. You're talking to the girlfriend. You're talking to everybody you can talk to try to convince this little pissant mother to come to your school, okay? You tell him he's the best thing since sliced bread. You tell him he's the best point guard you ever seen before. You tell him he's the best quarterback you ever seen before. And it's just 3 years of ass kissing, okay? And then all of a sudden the transfer portal comes. And voila, it all changes, okay? And let me tell you how. So if a kid normally is transferring out of a college, now we're talking about the transfer portal, kids transferring from college to college. So a kid is in college, you know, freshman, sophomore year, the kid decides he or she wants to transfer to a new school. That transfer situation normally happens after the season. So now you're looking at, for a basketball player, season ends in March, right? If you get to play into the postseason, March Madness. So that kid decides he wants to transfer, she wants to transfer in March. Now, usually schools enroll their players in summer school the summer before the school year so they can get more credits to be eligible to play if they have some problems during the school year. So that means between March and June, those kids in the transfer portal have to determine and decide where they want to go to their next school, which school they want to transfer to. So that means kids are in the transfer portal for about maybe 2 months, you know, maybe a month to 2 months, maybe 3 max, okay? But normally it's about a 1 or 2 month process. Now remember, the college recruiter, the college coach, spent 3 years trying to get this high school kid. Now I'm trying to get this transfer kid to come play for my school, and I have to recruit him now for, as we just said, about 2 months, right? From March to probably June, I need to try to get this kid to come to my school. So I bring him on campus, I show them around, and normally these kids commit relatively soon. So I spent less resources, I spent less time, I spent less money, right? Less mind power, and I got a player who's probably better constructed and more prepared to play immediately at my school. So let me talk about that in a minute in terms of that player being more ready. But just in terms of time, I spent 3 years recruiting this kid in high school, and I spent 2 months recruiting this kid in the transfer portal, and I get him to commit right? It's a win-win, right? For the kid, it's a win-win for me, and it's way less work. That's number one. And number two, Randy, this is where it gets really, really, really interesting. Which kid do you think is more prepared to play immediately at your college? Do you think a high-level high school recruit is ready to play immediately, or a kid now, Randy, who's played, say 2 years at a low Division I school? So now you're Kentucky. You're a school like Kentucky, okay? You're in the transfer portal. You got a kid that's played 2 years at a low Division I school, right? A low school like a UC Irvine, for instance, right? That's not a high major program, but just a low major program. But the kid was a standout player, double-figure scorer, all conference player, really good player, right, at that Division I school, low level. Which player do you think is more prepared to contribute right away, Randy? That kid who is low level, low level player, high level contributor at that low Division I school, or a really, really good high school player? Who do you think is physically, mentally, and ready to compete and give you more at your program?
The kid from the low Division I school. The
Bingo.
college kid.
Bingo, Randy.
Had a couple years on his belt.
Bingo.
He's grown. He's physical.
Bingo, bingo, bingo.
He's played against tougher competition, mentally, physically.
Right.
He's more prepared.
So, Randy, now, so the question is this. So why am I going to spend 3 years chasing after this kid when I'm getting a kid that it took me way less time to recruit, number one, and even more importantly, that kid is better prepared to contribute right away because of his experience and his size and what he brings to the table? Why?
It wouldn't make sense.
It doesn't make any sense, right? So then, Randy, and let me add another layer on top of this, that COVID, because of COVID, kids also got, another year. Now, the COVID rule this is the last year of the COVID rule, but the COVID rule even made it even better to get kids out of college and out of the transfer portal because they got another year back, the COVID year. So now all of a sudden, instead of a kid playing for 4 years, a kid now could play for 5 years, Randy. So if you get a kid that played 2 years at a low school, a low Division I school, okay, that kid would have 3 years of eligibility now to play at Kentucky or at whatever high-level school we talk about here, right? I would talk about Duke, but fuck Duke. I would talk about UCLA, but I don't like Cronin, right? Personal preferences. So let me talk about Kentucky again. Now, that kid now, Randy, comes from UC Irvine. I keep using UC Irvine. I can use other schools, right? I can use other, Cal State Fullerton or whatever the case may be. And that kid now all of a sudden has 3 years to play because of the COVID year. So nobody was taking high school kids at that point. So now all of a sudden, high school kids it used to be, Randy, if you were a top 100 player, top 150 player in the country, you were absolutely getting a high Division I scholarship. There's no doubt about it, right? You were top 100 to 150 kid, right? You were getting a high Division I scholarship. That ain't the case no more. It ain't. That is not the case anymore. If you're not a top 25 kid, top maybe 25 kids, you're safe. High major scholarships. Schools like Kentucky, schools like Kansas, the highest of the high, right? Those schools, are definitely recruiting top 25 kids, right? That's high level talent. But if you rank 84th in the country, rank 94th in the country, shit, it ain't no guarantee anymore because all these schools are holding more scholarships in that back pocket because when a kid gets into that transfer portal, I got to get him. I can't wait on this little pissant kid, right, out of high school to come. And by the way, Randy, let me tell you another layer of issue with a high school kid. Now the high school kid decides to come. Okay, I'm coming to your school, Randy, coach of Kentucky. I'm coming, coach. I'm coming. Freshman year. If I do work, what am I doing? I'm transferring. If I do work, I'm going to the draft. I'm going to the NFL, to the NBA.
True.
If I do work, I'm out. And if you don't play me, I'm out. So I spent 3 years recruiting you. You come on campus. You play well in basketball, and in a year you're out. The good thing about football is players have to stand for 3 years. So football kids can't leave right away, okay? But if a kid doesn't play or doesn't start, even if you play a kid and he doesn't start, guess what? I spent 3 years recruiting you, right? kissing the babies, talking to your parents, coming to watch your little ass play all the time, and you didn't start your first year and you leave. Okay? So what the hell am I gonna do? Why am I spending 3 years doing that, Randy? Why? I'm not. I'm going to get these kids out of the transfer portal. And the best example is Deion Sanders. 53 players out of the transfer portal. Hi, the 53 high, right? It's 53, right? 53. Randy, 53 players out of the transfer portal. And it changed the whole trajectory of the program in 1 year. On the basketball side, look at Kansas State, right? Marcus Noel, the kid from New York, tough little guard, 5'7", tough, right? Played amazing in the NCAA tournament, transfer kid from Arkansas, Little Rock. And they had the kid, Johnson, who fainted at the University of Florida. He had the heart issue, and Florida wouldn't clear him. And then they got him, he was, preseason before he fainted, SEC Player of the Year, high level SEC player, pro level player, right? He got drafted. And so he got drafted in this NBA draft. Transfers came in, all of a sudden Kansas State is a very, 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 very good team, right? Coach is relatively new, right? Was assistant coach for a lot of years at Baylor, relatively new, comes to Kansas State, and all of a sudden, he has a team that's competing at the highest level and performing at the highest level in the NCAA tournament. Transfers instantaneously change your program. Transfers instantaneously change your program, dogs. I mean, I can go example after example after example. Now, that becomes problematic because it's crazy. You can be good this year, but with transfers, with the transfer portal, bringing transfers in, losing transfers, you can be bad the next year because of it. But it's a real quick fix. And every year at the highest level, with players shuffling in and out, Randy, the transfer portal is so important, but it's really at the expense of these young high school kids. Because ultimately, these young high school kids are definitely not at a premium. Now, don't get me wrong. If you're a top 25 kid, a top 10 kid, a top 5 kids, I mean, that's high-level talent, obviously. And so those kids are going to absolutely be recruited. So by no stretch of the imagination am I saying that, top 25 kids are not going to get recruited to high-level programs. Of course they are. But if you just weigh, right, the time, the energy, the resources, where you better spending resources. You're better spending resources on players that you have to recruit for less time. And in addition to having to recruit them for less time, those players are really inclined, ultimately, to come into your program and be more prepared and ready to play. Because these players have already played in college, they've matured physically, they've had some time to lift weights, they've had some time to understand and adjust to the college game, they have had some time to understand what it's like living away from home. So having all those advantages clearly favors you taking the transfer kids. So the transfer portal right now is the biggest shit in sports, and it's changing the whole landscape of college sports forever. I really do. And I feel bad for the high school kids who are really getting squeezed out now. It's tough, Randy. It's tough, man.
Yeah, it is.